every relationship has red flags. This one's had 1,600 years of them. Meet England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Four nations that have been living under one roof for over 1,000 years and honestly still haven't fully worked it out. So, how did four nations end up sharing one house for 16 centuries without ever really moving in together? Let's break down the world's longest situationship. It starts in the 8th century BC. The island we now call Britain was home to the Celts. No landlord, no roommates, just them. Living in hill forts and roundhouses, farming and trading same as their neighbors across the channel. Then in 43 AD, Rome showed up uninvited. The classic overbearing house guest who just marches in. The North pushed back hard. What's now Scotland wasn't interested in new management. Rome eventually gave up on that room entirely and just built a wall to seal it off. That wall is still standing today. Hadrian's Wall, the very first line drawn between England and Scotland. By the 5th century, Rome's own house was falling apart. Barbarian invasions closer to home were pulling the legions back to defend Rome itself. So its troops packed up and left Britain behind. The Britons left behind were scared of the tribes up north, so they did what anyone does in a housing crisis. They called in help. The help they called was the Anglo-Saxons, and the Anglo-Saxons took one look at the place and decided they liked it a lot. So instead of protecting the house, they just kept it. The people who asked for help lost the lease entirely. The displaced Britons became the roots of Wales and Scotland. Ireland, untouched by any of this, kept going its own way. The land the guests took over got a new name: England. Centuries later, the Vikings showed up looking for a place to crash. One group that settled in Normandy, France, turned into something else entirely: the Normans. In 1066, Norman Knight William evicted the current management at the Battle of Hastings. It took him less than a day to end an entire royal dynasty. Anglo-Saxon England was out. Norman England had just signed the new lease. From here on, England's business was tangled up with the neighbors across the water, especially France. England's Norman king still held property in France, and France was done sharing. The two went to war, not for a season, on and off for over 100 years. Not that either side particularly needed a reason to fight. There were big wins along the way, and Poitiers, Agincourt, the kind of battles history still brags about. But in the end, England got dumped, pushed out of France for good. With nowhere left to expand abroad, England turned its attention back to the roommates at home. By the 12th century, Ireland was under English overlordship, backed even by a papal blessing. By the 13th, Wales was fully conquered, but Scotland wasn't going down without a fight. Scotland got the worst of it, under a king so ruthless that history gave him a nickname that stuck. They called him the Hammer of the Scots, and he lived up to it. He even took Scotland's sacred coronation stone back to England with him, just to make the point. But Scotland didn't stay pinned down for long. In 1314, Robert the Bruce beat the English decisively at Bannockburn. By 1328, England had no choice but to sign a treaty formally recognizing Scotland as a fully independent kingdom again, a status it would hold for nearly 3 centuries before anyone talked about union. But you can force people to share an address. You can't force them to like it. Every roommate here kept their own identity, grudges and all. In the 16th century, King Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church. Ireland didn't follow, it stayed devoutly Catholic. Around the same time Wales got folded in for good, the 1536 Laws in Wales Act didn't just conquer it, it merged Wales's laws and language into England's own. In 1603, the King of Scotland also became King of England. One crown, two kingdoms, same complicated household. In 1609, England moved Protestant settlers from Scotland into Ulster in the north of Ireland. A new set of house rules for one room only. That's exactly why Northern Ireland grew up with a different identity than the rest of the island. By 1707, it was official. England and Scotland merged into the Kingdom of Great Britain. Even so, Scotland kept its own church, courts, and schools. This was a merger, not a takeover. In 1801, Ireland moved in too. Now it was the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Under Queen Victoria, this household became an empire so big the sun never set on it. At its height, it ruled roughly a quarter of the entire world's land and people. But golden years for the house didn't mean golden years for everyone in it. In the 1840s, a potato blight wiped out Ireland's main food source. Food kept shipping out of Ireland anyway. About 1 million people starved. Another million left the house entirely, many crossing an entire ocean with barely more than the clothes on their back. This is where the idea of moving out for good really took hold. In 1919, Ireland fought a war for the right to move out. Britain couldn't hold on to the lease any longer. Most of Ireland got its independence, but Northern Ireland stayed behind. After 800 years, most of the room was finally free. In 1922, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland settled into the arrangement we still recognize today. A shape drawn by war, but one that has held for a century now. In the 1970s, oil turned up in the North Sea, and Scotland started eyeing the exit again. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland was working through its own reckoning. From the late 1960s, deep divisions over identity and rule erupted into 3 decades of violent conflict. A period known simply as the Troubles, which left thousands dead and reshaped the region for a generation. In 1998, after years of painstaking negotiation, the Good Friday Agreement finally brought an uneasy peace. Northern Ireland got its own power-sharing government, and everyone agreed its future would only ever be settled by a vote, never by force. That same wave of change gave Scotland and Wales their own parliaments, too. In 1999, each nation now runs its own local affairs, even while staying part of the UK. In 2014, 55% voted to stay. The relationship survived, barely. Then Brexit in 2016 reopened the whole conversation. After 1,600 years, the UK still isn't so much 4 nations that split apart, as 4 nations that never fully moved in together. That's 1,600 years of history fast-tracked. If this made things click, hit subscribe and leave a like, and tell us which chapter surprised you most.